midterms because it is halfway through his first term of the presidency, but it will be pretty much everyone else down ballot. So many governors are up for reelection. All the members of Congress, so all 538. Well, actually, all 435 of the members of the House of Representatives are up for reelection. And then I think it's around 30 or 40 senators are up for reelection too, because the Senate terms here in the US are 6 years, as well as local races. So, local sheriffs, local judges, local county commissioners, school boards. So, there are thousands of races, thousands of candidates that are going to be running across the country.
And in terms of the Congress part of things, what happens if the Democrats lose big to the Republicans? Does that mean that Joe Biden can't push any of his, any of his ideas and policies through?
More or less, yes. It's going to be really hard for Democrats and the president to get any more major legislation. And he has had several major pieces of legislation pass since he's been president: that infrastructure bill, that Inflation Reduction Act, which focused on climate provisions and other things. That kind of stuff will probably not happen. So I think it seems fairly likely that the House of Representatives will flip to be Republican control. I think there's a decent chance that the Senate flips as well. What that means is that they'll pass bills in the House. Um, they'll be more Republican and conservative leaning. And then if they make it through the Senate and they go to the president's desk, he will probably veto some of that legislation. So I think we can probably expect to see a lot of gridlock in Washington, D.C. in the next few years.
Now, in terms of the clip we played, that was Trump. He was at a Republican rally in Iowa. He was, trying to gee the faithful up for the elections. But as is oftentimes the case with the former president, quite a lot of his rhetoric was about himself.
Yeah, he is doing these campaign stops around the country. I think later today he'll be in Florida. He's going to some of these major swing states, but it's to campaign for candidates that are on the ballot in a few days. It's also to raise his own awareness. Iowa is one of the first major presidential stops that most candidates go to when they're running for president. So I don't think it's a coincidence that he was in Iowa last night. And of course, he's promoting his administration, the work that they did when he was president. And all these events are also fundraising opportunities for him. He can reach out to the people that attend the events afterwards through email, et cetera, and say, hey, donate money to us. So it's all kind of a part of, I think, his preparations to run for president himself, which there are some news outlets today in the US. I think the New York Times just confirmed this reporting too, that former President Trump is looking to announce that he will run for president again, maybe as soon as November 14th. Or sorry,
Now,
yes, November 14th.
now, in terms of current President Joe Biden, he obviously, Trump was a one-term president because Joe Biden beat him. But in terms of a runoff race between the two of them again, I mean, what are the polls showing? What's the likelihood that Trump might win?
I think that there's a decent chance that he could win. I think that the problem with being an incumbent president, and this is something that President Trump experienced himself, is you are running on the record that you had for the last 4 years. So I think when President Trump was running, it was the midst of COVID. There were thousands of Americans dying per day at some points. So all of those kinds of factors are front of mind for voters when they're going to the polls in November of 2020. Joe Biden will have that same experience if he runs again, which I'm not sure if that's a guarantee that he would even run again as well,
Eh,
though I do think that Biden and there are some people in the administration who think that he is the only person who could possibly beat Trump again. So I'm not sure. I think that it is possible that the former President Trump could make a comeback and could win the presidency again.
well, you've just been on a road trip to Arizona, which is kind of the epicenter of a lot of the conspiracy theories and a potential flashpoint, actually, on the run up to these elections. What was your experience when you were down there?
Sure, I've been reporting out of Arizona for almost a year now. I was there in December of last year trying to find a candidate who is running for Secretary of State there, Mark Fincham, who has had ties in the past to a far right militia group here in the US called the Oath Keepers. He was outside of the Capitol on January 6th. He is an election denying candidate. He is running to oversee elections in that state. He is somebody on the ballot who's an election denier. There's also Carrie Lake, who's running for governor, who has questioned the 2020 election results and denied them over and over, as well as Blake Masters, who's running for Senate there as well. So all three of those Republican candidates in Arizona are election deniers. And we were in Arizona about 2 weeks ago. We had a piece that aired last night on our Vice News Tonight channel looking at how these election conspiracies are really have really taken root in voters in the American sort of psyche, I guess, in the last few years. And I spoke with a few older gentlemen who live in a retirement community in Arizona who said, I fundamentally believe that Donald Trump should still be the president. I do not believe that Joe Biden won. And I asked them, do you think that there could be violence after this election, this midterm election in a few days, depending on the results? And and one of the gentlemen said, it's possible. It's always possible. Arizona is a state that has fairly relaxed gun laws. People can take guns with them into a lot of places. And he kind of said to me that, you know, people don't want to be pushed if they don't believe that the election was not conducted
Mm,
fairly. So I just think that there are a lot of election conspiracies and misinformation that float around the internet, and I think a lot of people are consuming this and believe this now, and I saw that in Arizona.